obviously the ultimate goal, Terry, is to win the Stanley Cup. And when you've got the nucleus and the core that we've got, that's as the manager, that's what I'm trying to do, is to build around that core of people and to eventually take another step. But I think that we had lots of positives this year.
Yes, Ken Holland with his most successful season so far as Oilers general manager. The question now, never mind getting better, can they be as good next season? Welcome to Got Your Back, brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products. Nobody puts in wood windows or siding anymore, so we ask, why build a wood fence or deck? Do it once with high-quality, maintenance-free vinyl. You can call my brothers Rick or Rob at DLR Vinyl Products. They've got locations in both Calgary and Edmonton. It is barbecue season, Struddy, and so I'm absolutely loving the vinyl deck out back, man. There's nothing like this time of year when you actually get a day off to be able to fire up the barbecue and enjoy some of the weather. It's the perfect time for that right now.
Yeah, I hear you're loving it, but I hear your neighbors aren't liking it as you're wearing a house coat. You look like Cousin Eddie standing on your deck. So I think for your birthday, I might be getting you a new house coat. The sex robe you wear, whatever. It's not working, man. You're not Hugh Hefner. I'll tell you that now. And your neighbors, you know who I'm talking about. I won't mention any names, but they know.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You literally come on this podcast and you make stuff up like this. You've done this before.
I don't know. It's the truth is somewhere in there, right? It lies somewhere in the gray area of story.
Yeah, you live in the gray area, man. You live and breathe and make your money in that gray area. Oh, nice. Good to see you, buddy. It's been a little bit. Listen, we wanted to take a day or two after the Oilers were done, first and foremost, because I needed a break for a day, but also we knew that Ken Holland would be talking and debriefing the season. So we're going to break that all down in a couple of minutes, but we haven't talked since the series ended, Struddy. And so I'll just check in with you and get your thoughts, man. Like, you know, I think Colorado's a better team. I think the Oilers lost to a better team. And I think that, you know, they're close, but they're not there yet. But to me, that's about as good a team as there is out there. And the Oilers were in some close games against them. How did you feel about the way it wrapped up?
Well, I think I called it that I thought the Avs would be 6 or 7, right, and beat the Oilers. My concern heading into the series was Kadri versus Nuge, and I think that played out in a big time favor of Kadri, right, until the injury. So you know, you can kind of see these things coming in a little bit. I don't think anyone really, I wasn't a genius to call that, but that was one area of concern. But the first game was, I thought it was just an awful exhibition game. Second game, complete domination by, well, for sure, second, third period by the Avs. But then you get to the third and fourth games. And I thought the Oilers really held their own. You know, I think those are winnable games. And so, you know, it's unfortunately, you know, you're still swept 4-0. But I saw the Oilers improve in an area where during a time where it maybe would have been easy to lay over or just say, okay, guys, you know what, lay down. No, we're down 2-0. This team is better than us. We're just going to kind of step away and just roll over, but they didn't. And they competed and they really improved in that third and fourth game. And I was really, you know what, the 4-0 sweep, it definitely is a sweep, but it's a little misleading. I think it could have been a little bit different outcome. Even I'm not saying the Oilers would have won, but maybe it could have been 4-1 or 4-2. So that is what I want to see. The ability for the coaches to make a game plan to adjust on the fly, and then B, for the players to keep the faith and try to get into it. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's a loss, right? Whether you lose in 7 or lose in 4, it's still a loss. But I saw improvement, and I really like that from this team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I saw improvement too. I think they learned some really valuable lessons here, Struds. I think, you know, they learned what winning playoff hockey looks like, but they didn't learn it just because a team came in and played that against them. You know, they learned what winning playoff hockey looks like because they played a bunch of it. They found a way to get to that level, that intensity level, that every man in, everybody finishing checks, everybody doing all the little things. Like they felt what that's like as a group. And to this point, I would suggest to you, they had not felt that yet. And I think that's a massive step for this group to take together and experience that idea, what winning hockey feels like, not to have it played all around you, but to realize you can play it, and for that group to play a bunch of it.
Yeah, I love it, because I think that really that what you're talking about really showed up in Game 4. The Oilers are pretty down. They were down Kane, down Yamamoto, and all of a sudden Fogle comes out of nowhere and plays his best game of the playoffs. Cassian takes that early penalty, but he comes back and he's battling like crazy. We saw a lot of guys that maybe McLeod, another guy who I think had a good playoffs in general. But, these guys started to show, and they were just gritty. In that last game, I mean, at times it looked like Draisaitl needed to be shoveled off the ice. Oh. You had Puljujarvi hurt his shoulder, like just the compete level. You have Keith trying to chop down Mikko Rantanen. Like, I love that just, we know we're down 3-0, but we're not going to give an inch here. Right. So just a lot of things to be impressed with by this group in this tough 4-game series. And you're right. The Avs are better. They are better than the Oilers. Yeah. Now, will they be in the future? Well, that's to be determined, but right now they are better than the Oilers, and the better team won.
Yeah. And I said it in the intro. I mean this, the challenge for the Oilers, Struds, to me is it's about how you come back and be as good next year as you were this year. Because if you look at the way a couple of things are shaking down on the roster front, it could be tough for them to do. And that leads us to Ken Holland and his exit interview today, as well as Jay Woodcroft's. And that's where we will do our breakdown, brought to you by Park Mazda, where the newly redesigned 2022 CX-5 has arrived. You can check out the brand new all-wheel drive sport design trim. It's got a turbocharged engine, and you can see all the available colors and trims in stock at parkmazda.ca. Okay, Ken Holland went over a whole bunch of stuff in his media availability, Struds, and I kind of want to systematically pick away at them issue by issue, and I'll kind of give you a chance for an overriding thought afterwards. But I just sort of came up with a priority list, and I want to stay really focused on each of these individual things as we go through them. And I'm going to start with the goaltending. To me, it's as important as most of the decisions that they have to make in this offseason as we go to the Average Joe's Soundbox. Average Joe's on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park, right next to Home Depot. We'll start out by listening to Ken Holland talking about expectations on Skinner and the goaltending.
We've got hopes for Stu Skinner, but I think he's 23 to really expect that he's going to come in and play 50, 55, 60 games. I think is too much to expect and too much responsibility to put on him. So I got to go through a process and figure out what to do. Where we're going. To think that we're going to end up with a number one guy that can play 60 games and he's a legit number one. He's 27, 28 years of age. The odds of that are pretty slim, but I haven't worked the phones. I don't know what other people out there are thinking with managers in terms of who's available, who's not available.
So listen, under contract, Stuart Skinner and Mike Smith. And in all due respect to both of these guys, Strud, Stuart Skinner, they still got to figure out how good a backup he can be in the NHL, because that's what he is in this moment. And I think that if it's Mike Smith and Stuart Skinner, I don't think it's improvement. And I think this is an area where they need to make improvement. I don't think returning those two guys is the step they need.
The biggest thing Ken Holland has to figure out is how much can he allocate to this position. All right, so let's just, there's some suggestions that maybe Mike Smith and maybe he's going to step back this year, step away. I don't know, but one or the other, whether it's Smith or Skinner, if you're one of them is not going to be there. So what can you allocate to this position, and who are you going to try to go out and get? The free agent market, there's some interesting names. Kemper, if he wins a Stanley Cup, what does that not look like? Billy Uso, can you trust him after a pretty good stretch for a couple months? Could you convince Marc-Andre Fleury to come here? There's lots of different guys in the trade market. Now, not only you have to figure out how much you're going to have to pay the guy you may know his contract, but what assets are you willing to give up? And how does that affect the rest of your roster? So, the fans are very, they're very dialed into this idea of get a new goalie. And I understand, I sympathize with them. Ken Holland said something interesting today. He said a lot of these teams, their goalies were homegrown. and they've grown up in that system, the Rangers and Tampa. Both those guys are like that. So to go out there and find the guy that's going to be better than what Mike Smith was this year in the stretch run in the playoffs, at that cap hit, it's a tall order. Not saying it's impossible, but it's a tall order. But you are taking flexibility from other parts of your roster to make that happen. Make no mistake, you are not getting a $2 million goalie that did what Smith did for this year.
Yeah. And, for me, like, it's a different type of goalie that they need. And I'm not trying to be hard on Mike Smith, but I really felt in the playoffs that, Mike Smith made some really good saves for them, and he battled, and we all know about those other parts of his game, right? But they need steady. They just need steady. They don't need, spectacular and the risk reward of the puck moving and all that. There's so much that comes with that in the end, I'm not sure that it was worth it, right? Because had they just had steady goaltending that they knew was going to be at a certain level most of the time, I think they would have fared better. Yes, Mike Smith can break up a forecheck and make a great pass, but man, was he erratic in there and inconsistent and prone to huge mistakes. And I just think for this group, given, the way that they defended overall, I think they need steadier in there. And so I agree with you. What is the answer, right? Free agency is difficult. You got to think Colorado's going to want to keep Kemper. They already lost a pretty good goalie, the last time around. You'd think they're going to want to keep him. You mentioned Husso is out there. Like, there's a few guys here that are available. What are the Leafs going to do? But that starts to get a little bit expensive. And for Stuart Skinner, I just think you need to create a space where he can come in and be exactly what he is, whatever he is. Not put too much pressure on him, not have a lack of opportunity there for him. Let him come in and develop into exactly what he's meant to develop into this year. And I think I would assume that's like a 20, 25 game backup. And if it's more, then that's bonus. But I do believe they need to upgrade at this position.
Yeah. And I can't really disagree with you. It's either one or the other. If Smith decides he's coming back, one of them, either Skinner doesn't come back or Smith doesn't come back. And that's
Skinner needs waivers, right? So, you can't lose Stuart Skinner. The organization cannot. So I believe Skinner's here either way, Struddy. Okay.
And I think we're both saying the same thing, is that if you can't bring these guys both back. So if the question becomes, who is it and where do you get them from and how much? And I pour through these things all the time because I get calls or texts about it all the time. And I'm trying to figure out, where is it? So one guy's name's out there, John Gibson. Is that the guy at Anaheim? Now, I think he's like 5.5 or 6 million a year. Okay. That's the number. So that's 4 million more than he paid for Smith last year. Yeah. What is Anaheim going to trade in the division for that guy? It's not going to be a gift. They're not gifting him over. So 1, 2, is it 2 first rounders? Is it 2 of your best prospect?
Well, he's got a no trade as well, right? Like, there's a no trade there that.
Yeah. Well, that's another, on. Right. So then you go to Islanders and Varlamov, Georgiev with the Rangers. They're not gifting these guys up. So what is the cost? What are you getting them for? And I'm not saying you can't have those conversations, but I think Oilers fans have to be prepared to be patient in the goalie front. And this is why. There are a lot of other areas in the Oilers that need to be addressed. Let me roll that back. There are some other areas that need to be addressed on the Oilers. I believe that Evander Kane fundamentally changed the way this team is set up by him being on that team. If he doesn't come back, it's not the same team. It is not the same. They don't have the same swagger. They don't have the same scoring. It's different. So maybe this is the year you have to accept something different in the pipes, knowing you got Kane maybe now for 1, 2, or 3 years. And then the next summer is when you maybe are able, with more flexibility, with Key's contract, with some of the other dead money coming off the cap, that is a time that you are able to have greater flexibility to solve once and for all the goalie issue.
And by then you'll have another year with Stuart Skinner, and you have maybe a little bit more of a sense of what you've got in him and what you need to go out and get. Okay, let's move on from the goaltending. You segued us nicely there into Evander Kane. The general manager did speak for a little bit today about him. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
You know, I thought there was wonderful chemistry between him and Connor. You know, he didn't play the first power play. He played on the second power play. So I thought we were deeper. When he joined our team, he made our team deeper. So can I keep him? Yeah. You know, again, his cap number is $2 million. I don't expect him to play for a $2 million cap number next year. I don't know what it is. I'd have to sit and talk to his agent, Dan Milstein, but.
Okay. Here is what I believe the situation is with Evander Kane. I believe Evander Kane is looking for a minimum of 6 years, and I believe he's looking for a minimum of $7 million a season. I believe Evander Kane probably feels, I mean, we'll see what happens with this arbitration case with San Jose, but he came in and absolutely blew the doors off this thing and showed he is a unique, elite power forward in this league, unlike most other players out there. And I believe Evander Kane is going to look to cash in both term and years. Now, I don't know if he's in for a rude awakening or not on the open markets, but when he and the Oilers open up negotiations and when they have their conversation, if the Edmonton Oilers, I believe if the years are 6 or more and the number is 7 or more, absolute non-starter to me where the Edmonton Oilers are concerned. And then it becomes a matter of, does that number eventually come down if he can't go and find it in free agency? I think Evander Kane set himself up to feel like the home run is going to be there. And I think he's going to look for that home run. And I don't think that home run's with the Edmonton Oilers studs.
Well, listen, let's call it what it is. The Oilers use Evander Kane, and Evander Kane has used the Oilers to the benefit of both parties. That's the way it works when you bring in a guy in. He was unreal value at $2 million. Like he was all day long a 6, 7, 8, maybe $9 million player this year if it's a full year. Like he was absolutely an animal for the Oilers in the regular season and the playoffs. My number is 3 years. That's where I stop. There's been just too many incidents as he's left other teams that I just right now I can't engage with that type of deal. You've already got Nuge lined up, you've got Hyman lined up, you've got Darnell lined up, and now you're going to bring Evander in for 6 or 7 years. I just can't. If I'm Ken Holland, I say, listen, Evander, we want you back. You know where you fit in. You know how you get to play, who you get to play with. You were great for us this year, absolutely amazing. But I end at 3 years. And if it doesn't work out, okay, no problem. We're gonna, part ways, and that's a huge loss for the Oilers. A huge loss. It's
not going to happen. It's not going to happen at 3 years. I firmly believe there'll be a team out there that'll give him more money and more term. And I think Evander Kane I think he's looking for 6 years minimum. And I think the only way that he stays in Edmonton would be if the Oilers were to give him what only the Oilers can give him at a little bit of a discounted rate off of what he's looking for. And there's no way the Oilers are doing that deal. Like he's 30, he's going to be playing at 31. I just don't think that's going to be out there. I think Evander Kane goes to market, and I mean, maybe he lands in the 5-year range. Maybe someone will put that money on the table. Part of it depends too on how the arbitration case goes, right? Like if he wins this arbitration case and, the arbitrator basically says they had no reason to do this to you. Well, that big thing that was hanging over Evander Kane, this big awful thing that he did that, had his contract, well, that's gone. That maybe he wasn't wrong after all. Maybe it was a bigger deal was made a bigger deal than it actually was. And if you're Evander Kane, you're probably sitting there. If you win this arbitration case or settle in a favorable way, you're going, so all those red flags everybody's talking about, I think Evander Kane feels like in a lot of ways it's been an unfair shake and sort of like, prove what's going on here. So you hear teammates in San Jose didn't like me. Well, ask me what I think about them. Maybe I don't like them. And I think there's kind of two sides to every story. And I think Evander Kane believes that, that those sides are maybe things that aren't necessarily thought of first and foremost, but I think this guy's going to look to hit the home run. And I think he's going to go where the money is. And I think there will be more money in term out there than the Oilers can give him. Yeah. And if that's the case, then that money is reallocated to the goalie. So that saves a lot of problem, right? If that is indeed like that's how cut and dry this is going to be. Ken Holland talked about this being a puzzle and sorting the puzzle out. That's how it works. There's only so much puzzle to go around. You've got to slice up in different parts and allocate it to different parts of your team.
like it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And I'd be surprised. I would not be interested in signing for more than 3 years. And listen, it's not the player. The player is a monster, but history, if someone kind of shows you who he is with relationship to teammates, eventually you kind of got to believe him.
Yeah. And I mean, we hear those stories over the years. I think Evander Kane in his camp would say there's two sides to those stories. And, and that if all of the details are fleshed out, maybe the whole thing is viewed in a little bit of a different way. So another tactic on how to use this, it's not even Kane money. They need to go find this money. So in order for them to even have a chance at signing Evander Kane, I mean, like it would have involved, Puljujarvi gone, Barrie gone, trying to figure out where Cassian goes, spending less money in other areas. Like it would have been a heavy lift. What if Evander Kane is a luxury that the Edmonton Oilers shouldn't even be trying to afford? Struds, what if this power forward, who we know they need, is more than what's required of this team in terms of where the fix actually lies? And where I'm going with this is this. Ryan McLeod's a third line center. He just showed us all that. This is the first year where I'm going to say Ryan McLeod's coming in as a 3 center. Well, guess what that means? Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins are your top 2 left wingers. You've got another top 6 forward in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins now because you don't need him at the third center position anymore. Take whatever resources you would have thrown at Evander Kane and beefing up your offense and make yourself a better defensive team. Solve your goals against, bring a higher level shutdown defenseman in, improve your goals against, rather than spending that money on increasing your offense, because Ryan McLeod developed his way up the lineup and there's upward motion in the top 6. And that involves a guy that already plays left wing. Your thoughts on that logic?
Yeah. So I like the way you're thinking. Ryan McLeod took a huge step forward. I quite frankly, I think Puljujarvi and Foegele were a very solid line for the Oilers when they were united. I thought they did a good job, considering their playoff experience that collectively they had. I thought they did a really nice job. So basically, we're talking about going back to where they were at the very beginning when Kane came in, but now Nuge is in that top group. Hyman plays a heavier game. There's no doubt about it. I think Leon does as well. Nuge, the shoulder injury, I don't think Nuge is a heavy player. Connor is Connor. So I don't, whatever. Let's just leave that one on the side table. And then who else do you put up there? Then the other guy. Yeah.
Yamamoto,
So
and now you're looking
a lot
for
of
another
heart.
top 6 forward.
Yeah. A lot of heart in there. But unless it's Puljujarvi, unless Puljujarvi's guy, but I think
Puljujarvi.
Yeah, see, I think I have more. I would like to see Foegele, Puljujarvi, and McLeod as that line. They're big, they're fast, and they can, they're scoring is probably going to be a bit of a challenge next year if they're together. Yeah. But they'll have to figure that out as they go. But I understand
what our next topic, so we'll dive deep into him.
Leave it there.
But stick in the top 6 there, and defending better, right? And defending better by using those assets that way.
So are the assets better spent getting a one guy that plays 20 minutes or getting a goalie that plays 60? So I would probably, if that's the road you're going to go, if collectively they decide they're not bringing back Kane at, I don't know, five, let's just call it 5 million, just so I can wrap my brain around it. And you allocate that to a goalie, right? So Smith or whoever is at 2 million, now he's at 6 million. 6 million gets you a pretty damn good goalie in today's world. So I would probably, instead of getting a defender, I would get the goalie that solves the problem.
Yeah. And you want to talk about meaningful ways to improve your team. Evander Kane he's a luxury, and he's a difference maker, and he's a huge part of the reason why they made it as far as they did. But if they didn't have Evander Kane and defended better and had more consistency in net, they might not have needed 5 goals a game to win. Right. So what's realistic? I don't think Evander Kane's realistic. I want to deal in reality here. So I think reality is reallocate those resources and make yourself better defensively. And we can talk about some of those options. Just a different strategy. When you think about McLeod moving up to third line center, that gives you 2 left wingers in your top 6 that make top 6 money. Evander Kane, now you're either moving Zach Hyman over to the other side, or where are you playing Nuge? Like, what's going on? So just a thought process on upward movement and how it affects the Evander Kane situation. Yes, a Puljujarvi. Okay. You and I might disagree a little bit on his playoff performance. We can dig into that here in a moment. But first, as we go back to the Average Joe's sound box, Average Joe's on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park, right next to Home Depot. Here is the general manager. He said a lot about Puljujarvi today. Here's a piece of it.
He played really good the first quarter of the season, and then he kind of come off it, and it was a struggle for him. I think the last half, I think he lost his confidence. Then when he lost his confidence, he obviously was in the top six, and he worked his way down to the bottom six. And but what is he, 24 years old? I mean, he's not really young, but he's relatively young. So I got to sort out Jesse.
Is he part of the solution?
That's what I got to sort out. And I talked to him yesterday. I don't want to divulge what we talked about, but I talked to him for a good half an hour yesterday, and I told him I would talk to his agent.
Okay, so discussions need to be had. A contract needs to be worked out. They got the three restricted free agents in McLeod, Yamamoto, and Puljujarvi. I think Yamamoto and McLeod are higher on the priority list than Jesse Puljujarvi is, Struds. I'll let you start with how you thought his playoff performance was and how much of a priority should it be that he is back.
So I'm going to say this. I don't want the Oilers to trade Puljujarvi away. I think that he's a guy that I want to have in this group. He's big and he can skate. This playoffs for Puljujarvi was disappointing. I think they needed him to be a higher level player, and the physicality lacking in his game. That to me was a big issue. You can't be that big and not be physical, and physical doesn't express itself just in plowing guys over. It's finishing checks, but I think it's taking that big body and driving the net, push D-men back into the goalie.
And I'll just pause you right there. And to your point, he did actually throw a decent number of checks in the postseason. He upped his game in terms of finishing checks, but I like where you're going with what you're talking about. It's a different kind of physicality than just finishing checks.
It is. I don't see him ever being the guy like Zach Cassian that can blow guys up. And I don't need that from him. I need him to push D-man back into their goalie and put him on his lap. Like that is what as a D-man, I literally hated when I'd be up lined up with some like, oh my God, there's Puljujarvi. I know he's going to not drive the net hard and I'm going to have to make a choice. Do I take him or do I release and try to play somebody else? Like, didn't do it enough for me. Like that is it. Winning puck battles. Once you get the puck, holding on to it. Holding on to it doesn't mean getting and just throwing it, dumping away. Hang on to it, make plays. So that's his confidence. I think that's where his confidence expresses itself. That he struggled. So and maybe unfairly, I had higher expectations for what he could deliver in this playoffs. But I am firmly in the camp of not trading Puljujarvi. I believe he's a 25 goal scorer. I don't want to see this guy traded.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that just trading him for the best you can get and turning the page is necessary. But if I'm the Oilers, he's third on my list of the restricted free agents to prioritize. I think Yamamoto, let's get a little bit real here. The two-star players both really like playing with Kailer Yamamoto. The head coach has basically told us that, right? He is an often requested line mate. I don't believe that playing with Puljujarvi has been their favorite. So I think the days of asking McDavid and Draisaitl to have Puljujarvi on their wing, I think that's kind of run its course in a lot of ways. And until his game adjusts and changes and grows, I think that's run its course. So I believe the Oilers are and should be in the market for a top six right winger to play on one of those two lines if they're moving on from Evander Kane. I think if you bring Puljujarvi back as a third line right winger and he is paid as such and his expectations are to be paid as such on a decent contract that makes sense, then I agree with you. I think there's some space in a third line situation for him. I'm not sure if that's going to be there to be had. I don't know if that's the way the player views himself. I don't know if that's the way the negotiations go. And it honestly, my gut on this is that Puljujarvi is not back next year. That it's the value of what you could get for him on the open market has finally gotten to a point where it'll probably make sense for that deal to get done. And I feel like there's as decent a chance this offseason as there ever has been that he has gone, Struds.
Yeah. So if I'm Puljujarvi, I am not signing anything more than a 1-year deal. I'm betting. I'm not even betting on myself. I didn't produce in line with what I think my numbers be. There's a strong component amongst the Oilers fans that think this is a $4.5 to $5 million player on a long-term deal. I don't believe. I don't believe, and his underlying numbers. I know the underlying numbers. I look at them. I see it. I understand it. But I have to. Those things are part. I also have to be able to mesh that with what I see. And what I see is a player who is not finished, a non-finished product. So maybe they're saying, well, we got to sign him now before he goes off. I'm not sure that's the case right now. But this is the problem. If you move out Puljujarvi and Kane is not re-signed, that's 2 of your top 9 forwards that aren't back. And now you got to replace those guys. One of them made $2 million. The other one made $1 million. Or let's say together they made $3.5 million. You're not going to replace those 2 guys and their production. So what is that? Well, I guess it's hard because Kane only played half a year, but let's say he would have scored 40 goals in a full year and Puljujarvi had 15. That's 55 goals you have to replace by $3.5 million. That's not happening unless that Russian player they're talking about comes over and he scores 30 goals for them. Like it's that is how you do the money. That's an amazing production from those 2 guys for that money.
Yeah. And well, it's not happening again. I mean, that scale you just presented is skewed by $6 million because of the contract that Kane was on. And, the Oilers don't necessarily, people will hate that I say this. If they defend better, they don't necessarily need all those goals. Like if they defend better, of course you want them. Of course you want them. But if you do a better job defending, then you can probably get away without that much resource put into those positions. I hear what you're saying, man. I think Puljujarvi, Jay Woodcroft did his best to, I would say, defend the player and create a realistic case for his performance, talking about how good he started under Jay Woodcroft and was getting momentum and confidence and then got hurt multiple times and tried to play through it, and credit to him and good for him for doing that. But what we saw in the postseason here was just from when you think about Puljujarvi when he was at his best this year, and then look at what he was in the playoffs, he was a shadow of himself. He literally couldn't handle a puck. He couldn't take the puck and skate 30 feet. And the drop off was so stunning. Struds, he was lucky he was not healthy scratched during times in these playoffs. I firmly believe that. And Jay Woodcroft stuck with him and eventually found a niche for him on a line. And they did get some valuable minutes out of those guys. He's a 3rd-line player all day long. And if he's okay with being paid as such and okay with that role and not feeling like, I deserve more, then I think that's potentially a good fit for the Oilers. I don't know where his head is at on all of these elements, but the idea that he is a top 6 forward and needs to be played as such next year, I don't see it. And I think the team needs to aim higher. And I think that they need to provide different line mates for their top 2 guys. So maybe it'll work out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll work out. And we will have to wait and see. He's such a polarizing figure in this market. And every time you talk about, like, listen, this is just a realistic conversation about where the player is at. He's a really nice kid. Love our chances to talk to him in the media, wish him all the best and all of those things. I just don't know that the fit is going to be there longer term. Okay. That was a good one. Let's move on to Tyson Barrie. Let's move on to Tyson Barrie / the blue line. Okay. I think of all the regulars here, Struds, I think of guys that potentially could be not back next season. Of the regulars, I think Puljujarvi and I think Tyson Barrie. Those are the 2 that I think we could see movement on. And this goes to the idea of defending in a different way. Evan Bouchard is ready to take a step. Evan Bouchard is ready to run a power play. He's ready for some increased minutes. You're not going to give him everything just yet, but he's ready to take that over. And I could see the Oilers wanting to fundamentally shift the shape of their blue line a little bit. And I think there's value out there in Tyson Barrie.
Yeah, he's a power play guy. He can run the power play. I look at him, like Shattenkirk, the deal he signed with Anaheim was it last summer? But he signed, I think, 2 or 3 years for $4 million. Tyson Barrie's at 4.5, and he's a few years younger, right? So When I'm looking at the Oilers' blue line, number one, I think they have to bring back Kulak. Kulak's ability to skate is very desirable. And this guy, every time he touched the ice, just hear the cash register in the back of his head just going off. And that guy, I don't get the sense he plays for the money, but he made himself a lot of money in this playoffs.
Sure.
The last two playoffs, let's give him credit. The last two playoffs, he was very good. He defended harder. I thought he got more physical as the playoffs went on. He's a big guy. He's local. So there's a lot of reason to bring him in. I would look hard at re-signing Kulak because I think the team's better with him on the ice or better with him in the top in that six. The issue with trading Barrie, in my mind, is if Bouchard isn't around for some reason, gets hurt, who runs the power play? I think it falls right on. Well, that's exactly it. Falls on Nurse, and Nurse is already 5-on-5. Yeah, but he's 5-on-5 and PK. So now he gets cranked right back up to the minute C we're at. Now, I'm painting. Yeah, I know. I'm painting.
You got
fair point.
Be able to do that.
But I think that this defense coach, Dave Manson, is trying to spread around the minutes more than we've seen in the past. So I think they'd like to see more guys around the 16 to 22 minute mark rather than 12 and 25. I think they're trying to get it. It feels like they're trying to spread the love around. Listen, I'm painting a bad picture. Like Bouchard's going to get hurt. We're not even done this barely done this past season. So if you can move out Barrie and get an asset back, the one thing, if you sign Kulak, now all of a sudden there's a spot open there, and there's got to be some room for Broberg to move up at some point. And so we know Keith's contract's up after next year. That number won't be 5.5 if he comes back, if he comes back after the year. So that gives Broberg some move because there will be injuries next year. He will get a chance to play, maybe play some time in the minors. Like it can be 40-40 or 50-50 split, whatever. But if you're telling me by moving out Barrie and you're bringing someone maybe a little bit heavier, a little bit more stout defensively, and that leaves room for Broberg, and you sign Kulak, I think I'm open to that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's the format of it, right? So the basic idea is, and I like Tyson Barrie. I think he's a really good guy. I think the guys really like him. I think he was an important ad. I think he was a great fit. I think he's a professional, all those things. This is just strictly about the shape of the blue line, and that is it.
Yeah.
Because he's a valuable player. And I was a proponent of him coming here. But as you watch Bouchard develop, you look at the points he put up this year, you look at his goal scoring ability, what he can do on the blue line, learn some tough lessons, definitely learn some tough lessons. But I think he's ready to take a step next year, and I think you need to allow for that. And if you want to cut down on your goals against, I think you need to change the shape of your blue line a little bit. So, Kulak,
I just want to jump in.
Yeah, go.
Sorry. I didn't mean to, but there has to be mobility. You look at Zadorov and Gabranson were good defenders for the games during the regular season. You got into the playoffs and they had a really tough time against the Oilers. I thought they had a really tough time against the Oilers. So those aren't the type of guys that I want to see them replace them with. You don't need, the Jason Strudwicks out there. You need guys that can skate and defend. Now, defending today isn't the same as it was 15 years ago, where it was like Luke Richardson mauling you and stealing your lunch money, right? Like it is a defending with your feet like a Kulak. So, and you look at Colorado, Byram, Makar, and what's his name? Those, and Samuel Jardine, those guys, they're not abusive, but they all skate and defend really well with their feet. So because the guy I was looking at was Scott Mayfield out of the Islanders. I like him. I think he's a good player. But after watching Gabranson and Zadorov in the playoffs, I'm not so sure that that's the lineup. I will need the lineup if I get back to the Western Conference Final against the Avs next year.
Yeah, I'd be a little harder on Zadorov, a little less hard on Gudbranson. I think Gudbranson actually skates not too bad. And if you look at the minutes that he played for them, I thought he gave them some really good minutes. The other thing about Eric Gudbranson is, and I'm not saying he's the solution, but if you're looking at bringing in a depth guy that can solidify your right side a little bit in the depth positions, is he can take care of everybody too. And you're losing an element in Evander Kane. You're losing an element in Evander Kane that, we'll see what Cassian's situation is next year. I just think it's an added bonus if you got a guy that can do that. So right shot guy, I think he moves reasonably well. He played a ton under Sutter. Was he exposed when he was out there against the top guys? For sure. Can he play against middle six and bottom six wingers? I think so. So I would have a little bit more time for that guy because of the other elements that he can bring. But yeah, the shape of the blue line, man, that's a big one. And it's finding the right guy. And is it a trade? And, what does Tyson Barrie get you on the market? Yeah, they definitely, if they're not going to have Evander Kane there, the focus, I think, needs to be on cutting back their goals against, and that's goaltending, and that's definitely the blue line. What else is on your list of to do for them, Struds? We've covered a lot of stuff, but any other thoughts on what Ken Holland's got going here, and what you think this offseason could bring?
Well, I think number one is Woodcroft, but I'd be blown away if that doesn't get done. I'm not an insider, but he's been here for a long time. I'm not saying he's been waiting for this, but I think he was hoping this would happen. I'm guessing, and now he's done. He did a good job, and he knows this team. But I have a list of things I would go through. I would start with Evander Kane. Where are you at? Are you even interested or not? What does it look like? And then you solve. And then you just keep working your way down. And as things get clicked out, like that door closes or opens, and then something else opens or closes, right? So if you're suggesting that Kane 6 years and he's like, that's too much, Kate, door closes. Now we move on. What's our next biggest priority? Okay, is it goalie? Is it Kulak? Is it moving Barrie? And I'm calling about Barrie. Can I move Barrie? What does that get me? Like, I think there's a market for Barrie. Cassian, can Dylan Holloway take a spot? Can you get Dylan Holloway in there for skating and body? Probably better playmaker. I think maybe not right away, but over time. If you need to get a guy who's a little bit more physical, like the guy can, fight 5 times a year. That used to be one game 15 years ago. But, if you can find a guy, you can find a guy to do that. Like a Ryan, not like it, but someone like that, like a Delorier, someone like that, that'll help. Maybe Boston be looking at moving Foligno, right? You don't know what's going to happen there. So there are options out there for that. But I'm going through my list. I have everyone listed up, and I like I said, those 3 young guys, that middle tier, Yamo, JP, and McLeod, I want to get them done. I'd like to sign McLeod for 3 years. I think that for me I would look at, there's a guy, Oliver Bjorkstrand, played with Columbus. Yep. His second deal, now McLeod didn't put numbers up like that, but his second deal was like $2.5 million times 3. I don't know that'd be a bad deal for a Yamo. I think they pretty good comparable when you look at their age and their numbers. And I think you could also work off of that for McLeod. Now way down, like, I'm not saying $2.5 million, but I think that if you can get those guys locked in and start getting some cost certainty, I'd like that. Then I think Kulak's a huge one for me. I just think it is, and it's not sexy. And I don't know what that number is. I know there was reports $2.5 million, maybe it was for 3 or 4 years. But I think that number's higher. I think
it's closer to 3. Yeah.
I think he's around CC. Like CC is 3.5, right? Yeah. I think he's 3.5. So is he 3? If it's 3 years at 3 for Kulak, that might be something you have to take a hard look at, because you're saving 1.5 off of Barrie, right? You're saving 1.5 off of Barrie
3 for sure.
Yeah. And then you have to remember Keith comes off next year. So, whether he comes back or not, that number is not the same. So you have Nurse, Kulak, Broberg. Does Broberg take Keith's spot the next year, right? Now you can start, like, I'm trying to plan out 1, 2, 3 years out, right? I don't want to just say this is it and this is how we're going to do it. There's got to be a plan. So you're not every year like, hey, we got to replace Evander Kane. Okay, we got to replace this. We got to replace that. Internally, can you have some or solutions that are cheaper? That's why if you can trade Cassian, can Holloway take his time? Can Holloway take his space and have the same size, more upside long term? And I know he's not as mean, but can he have that same type of physicality so that's how I'm trying for solutions in-house that lower your cap hit so you can adjust and maybe make bigger plays in other areas you need to be.
Yeah, it's about internal growth, right? So I started the podcast by posing the question, never mind improving. Is there a way for them to make sure they're as good next year? And I think that is going to be a big challenge. They got to the Final Four this year and gave Colorado, they got swept, but they gave them some pretty good games. How do you improve, when you're not even sure you can come back and be as good? And I think a lot of that is internal, right? Bouchard takes a step, McLeod takes a step, Holloway by the end of the year is a top 9 forward, maybe we'll see. And then there's a top 9 forward that just fell out of the sky for you, right? So those are little ways that you can make incremental improvements. To me, I'd be looking for a 12 to 17 goal. I'm talking this season, right winger on the unrestricted free agent market. Go find a guy that got between 11 and 17 goals this year, and you throw him next to Connor McDavid, he's going to get 22 or 23. And that's a top 6 forward that you add, because you'll have Hyman and Nuge on one side. You'll have Yamamoto on the other. You add your free agent in there. And then Puljujarvi, if he's around, locks down that third spot, and then you've got lots of space elsewhere. So it's about figuring out a way to get a little bit better or be as good. And I think it's going to be a real big challenge for Ken Holland. It's going to be fun to watch him wheel and deal his way through it. All right, that was the breakdown, brought to you by Park Mazda, where the newly redesigned 2022 CX-5 has arrived. Check out the brand new all-wheel drive sport design trim with its turbocharged engine, and see the available colors and trims in stock at parkmazda.ca. Struddy, great stuff, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lots more to come here on the podcast, folks. Stay with us. This has Got Your Back, presented by DLR Vinyl Products. Hey, Struddy, question for you. Have you ever tried putting in your own fence?
I sure have. Between digging the posts, mixing up cement and digging the holes, it's absolute killer.
It's brutal on the back. Well, listen, what if I told you you could put in a fence without having to dig a hole or mix any concrete?
I'd be much more likely to come over and help you out.
Yeah, well, you're not the first guy I would call, but thank you for that. Listen, my brother's company, DLR Vinyl Products, they've come up with a system where you can actually put high-quality vinyl fence in the ground without having to dig a hole, without having to mix any concrete. They can teach do-it-yourselfers how to do it, and they can also work with contractors who might be looking to start installing vinyl. It's super high-quality product. The great thing about it is that it has fantastic longevity. You put it in, you don't have to worry about staining or sanding or anything like that. I've been lucky enough, Struddy. They've put in multiple fences in my different yards, and they've built me 3 decks. I have totally abused the fact that my family is in the fencing and decking business, but it's great product. Give Rob a call in Calgary or Rick a call here in Edmonton. This is a company my dad started. It's a family business. I'm super proud of it, and I'm very proud that they are our title sponsors. That's DLR Vinyl Products in Edmonton and Calgary. Hey, it's Ryan Rishaug. While many are feeling the sting of inventory shortages, Park Mazda has you covered. They've got new Mazdas arriving every month, including the redesigned 22 CX-5 in whatever color you're looking for. They've also got a huge selection of used vehicles with new arrivals every week, and some of the most competitive interest rates on cars, trucks, SUVs, and more. Park Mazda, your dealer for life, in Sherwood Park, off Y Road. Schedule a test drive at parkmazda.ca. Folks, golf season is just around the corner, and I don't know about you, but I am some kind of fired up over it. It's the perfect time to get yourself fitted for new clubs or some great new apparel. Well, DeBoers has you covered for all of it. Their facility is first class with amazing TrackMan technology in their simulators and top-of-the-field fitting specialists. You can order now for spring delivery, and they've also got a bunch of new 22 apparel for you to go check out. It's a fantastic group down there at DeBoers. The shop has a great positive feel. I highly recommend you check them out on the corner of 53rd Street and 99th Avenue. DeBoers, helping you play better golf since 1999. Average Joe's Sports Bar in Sherwood Park has proudly served the community and supported minor sports in the area for almost 20 years. It's a great gathering place for sports fans. Average Joe's has massive big screen TVs, comfortable seating, and a friendly staff waiting to make your experience anything but average. Come check it out on Baseline Road, right next to Home Depot, or make a reservation by calling 780-417-1113. That's Average Joe's on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park. All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by DeBoers, helping you play better golf. Your local golf shop for the last 23 years. DeBoers Golf Shop and Fitting Center over on 99th Street. It's got everything you need. Equipment, clubs, bags, apparel, anything you need to get your golf game rocking and rolling. Strongly recommend you stop by DeBoer's. It's a great shop with a great atmosphere. Absolutely love it. And I'm going to try and get back there in the next few days before I have to head off to the Stanley Cup final. So Struddy, everyone's had a chance to tell their got your back story except for me on the podcast. Zuby was mentioning that to me. He's like, when are you telling a story? And I thought, yeah, okay, well, I guess I probably could since, we've been doing that on the podcast all along. So listen, mine will go back to junior. And this is trying out for the Blazers. I was an 18-year-old trying to walk onto the team and hadn't ever been in a hockey fight. I don't know if you recall what that felt like, Struds, back in the day when you were still waiting to get into your first one.
Oh, yeah.
What that nervous energy was like. You were like, oh, man, this is not, I don't know about you, man, but it haunted me. I was worried about it. And because I wasn't a kid that scrapped much in school. Like I never got into scraps in school. I like no one had ever punched me in the face in my lifetime. Right. So like, yeah, the idea of going at it in hockey, whatever. So I'm in training camp and I was a local. And one of the assistant coaches was one of my coaches in minor hockey. So like I knew him and he coached me in Bantam and midget. And, he was an ally. And we were like 4 or 5 days into training camp. And it was remember the big blue-white intra-squad game? That was kind of then there was always a huge round of cuts right after the intra-squad game. And I had done okay in camp, but whatever. And it's the night before the intra-squad game. And I'm sitting at home, hanging out, watching TV, and the phone rings. And I pick it up, and it's the general. And this is Al Glendenning. This is the assistant coach of the Blazers that year. Do you know the general? You know Al?
I know who he is. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Al was like, an AHL player. I think he was a draft pick. I think at some point, I can't remember. Big scar. Like he was a scrapper, like tough guy. Right. And he taught us a lot of lessons in minor hockey about, paying the price and being there for one another and being a good teammate and doing tough things. Yeah. And he really, really grizzled a lot of us up. So the night before the blue and white game, the phone rings and it's Al. And he's like, Rish. Yeah, oh, what's up? He goes, get your flippers off tomorrow. This phone call never happened. Click. And I'm standing there on the phone. I was like, oh, geez. Like I knew it had to happen, Struddy. Like, when you're a guy that's done nothing but play minor hockey and you're trying to convince these people you can play in the Western Hockey League, you don't have to go out there and kill people, but you got to show them the intent to play. You got to show them you're willing to do difficult things and how bad you want to be there. And I knew it, and I hadn't found the courage yet. And Al called me, and I had no choice after that. Like no choice. So the next day we're playing in the blue and white game, and I'm sitting on the bench, and there was another local guy that was on my team that was trying out too. And I look at him and I go, did you get the call? He goes, yeah, I got the call. I'm like, we got to figure this out. Like, who are we going to fight? So we decided, well, it's got to be vets. We got to fight vets, right? So we decided it's going to be Brad Lukowich and Jason Holland. Like those are the two guys that like if we're going to go, you got to, I'm not going to grab Donnie Kinney or something, right? Like you're going to grab the guy that'll get noticed. And so Matty goes out there, and Matty was a tough kid. He goes out there and drops the gloves with Lukowich. You picked the wrong door, man. Like you played with Luke, his deal, right? He had a boxing background. Scrappy. And Matty Ward is just pulling him from his shoestrings, trying to throw bombs. And Luke's just sitting there like bang, 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 just filling him in. And so Matty goes to the locker room afterwards. He's leaking everywhere. I'm sitting on the bench, just sweating bullets because he went first. And now I know I got to go do this. And he came back to the bench like 5 or 6 minutes later. He's got gauze up both his nose and his eyes are swollen. He's like, I'm looking at him like, oh no. So
how'd it go?
How'd it go? Hey, nice job, bud. I mean, I give him credit for getting back out there. And next shift I had against Holly, I just went over and slashed him and dropped my gloves and grabbed onto him. And he had no interest in fighting me. Like as a vet, you have no interest in fighting some piece of shit Wiki that just get out of my face. But I just didn't even give him a choice. I just dropped my gloves and started mauling him. And I did fine. Like, he got a couple of pretty good ones in on me. I just hung on for dear life. But that was my first hockey scrap, and I survived it and ended up making the next round of cuts. Found a little bit of courage, got into a few more scraps in the exhibition season, and did just enough to barely cling on as about the 15th forward. And but Al Glendenning definitely had my back the night before that blue and white game, man. And I'll never forget that phone call. Get your flippers off. This phone call never happened. Like,
oh, I love it. You know what's funny? Coaches. You know what I realized as I went through is that the guys that if they stopped talking to you, that means they didn't care.
Yeah.
And you know, I had Mark Crawford in Vancouver, and he was all over me. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know, did I not give your kid Halloween candy at Christmas? You know, like, it was awful. But when they care, they want to help you. I notice the same thing with me now. Like, I coach kids all different ages, all different abilities. And after a while, if I just don't think you care anymore, I stop talking to you, you know, but if I care about you, I'll continue to work with you. And I see improvement there, right? That's all you want. So I love that he did that. And obviously he was 100% in your corner and wanted the best for you.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how Matty Ward ended up feeling about that whole thing. I'll have to circle back and get what his recollections are about that whole thing. But anyways, Al Glendenning had my back. Struds, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate you. Appreciate your contributions today. We'll do this again real soon. That'll wrap up the podcast, folks. Huge thanks, as always, to all of our sponsors here on Got Your Back. We really appreciate their support. And we had a ton of fun on this run through the Oiler playoffs. DLR Vinyl Products, my brothers, Rick and Rob, so supportive of the podcast. Thank you, guys. Mitch and the gang over at Park Mazda. I drive a CX-5 and I absolutely love it. Les and the crew over at Belvan Construction. They do great work. Whatever your commercial construction or renovation needs are, think about Belvan Construction. DeBoer's Golf Shop. Can't wait to get there this week in the next few days and see the whole crew over there at Average Joe's Sports Bar in Sherwood Park. This has been Got Your Back, presented by DLR Vinyl Products. More to come in the weeks ahead, folks. Download, subscribe. I'm heading off to the Stanley Cup Final, so Got Your Back is going on the road, and it's going to be lots of fun. We appreciate your support to this point, and we'll talk to you soon, maybe from Denver. Cheers.